Ecclesiastes chapter 2, beginning in verse 18 and reading down through verse 23. I came to hate all my hard work here on earth, for I must leave to others everything I have earned. And who can tell whether my successors will be wise or foolish? Yet they will control everything I have gained by my skill and hard work under the sun. How meaningless. So I gave up in despair, questioning the value of my hard work in this world. Some people work wisely with knowledge and skill, then must leave the fruit of their efforts to someone who hasn't worked for it. This too is meaningless, a great tragedy. So what do people get in this life for all their hard work and anxiety? Their days of labor are filled with pain and grief. Even at night, their minds cannot rest. It is all meaningless. C.S. Lewis said that human history is the long, terrible story of man trying to find something other than God which will make him happy. I think that's a great summary of Ecclesiastes. That human history is the long, terrible story of mankind, men and women, trying to find something other than God which will make them happy. That's Ecclesiastes. What makes Ecclesiastes, in fact, so timeless and so relevant today is that it rightly assumes that everyone, no matter who they are or what they claim to believe, everyone craves meaning and they spend their lives trying to secure it on their own steam. That's the assumption that this teacher, this writer, this psychologist makes, that everyone craves meaning and we will look under every rock and behind every tree to find it. We will exhaust all of our resources to try to locate a meaningful life, something that will make us feel like we matter. We all want our lives to count. It's a good want. It's a good want to want our lives to be meaningful, to want our lives to count. We were created for meaning. We were created to have meaningful lives. The question is, where are we looking to find it? That's the question. What are we depending on to make life worth living? What are we hoping will save us? Is it work? Is it our children? Is it romantic relationships? Is it beauty? Is it sexual pleasure? Is it possessions? Is it success, financial security, power, influence? I mean, we could be looking anywhere. And as it turns out, we end up looking everywhere. This is why I said 2 weeks ago that if I were to give Ecclesiastes a subtitle, it would simply be The Search. Now, I also mentioned 2 weeks ago that the key to understanding Ecclesiastes is to understand the phrase under the sun, which appears 29 times in the book of Ecclesiastes, under the sun. And what the writer wants us to understand about that phrase is that phrase really means this: the way life and this world functions and feels if there is no God. If this life and this world is all that there is and there is no God, that's what he means when he begins describing life under the sun, life without God. The writer to Ecclesiastes is not the first or the last person to identify life's meaninglessness apart from God. I was doing some research yesterday and came across a handful of quotes, some of which I knew and some of which I'd never read before. Bertrand Russell, who was an atheistic philosopher in the 20th century, said he didn't believe in God. He was an atheist, a philosophical atheist, and he said, apart from God, everything is meaningless. He concluded that life and this world is meaningless because there is no God. Even as an atheist, he understood that if there is no God, then ultimately everything is meaningless. Philip Appleman, who was an American poet, summed up where he believed meaning under the sun comes from. He was at least believing that there is such thing as meaning, but listen to how despairing his conclusion was. Whatever we are, whatever we make of ourselves is all we will ever have. And that, in its profound simplicity, is the meaning of life. More recently, Woody Allen was asked what he believes the meaning of life is in an interview, and he said this: life is a grim, painful, nightmarish, meaningless experience, and the only way you can get through it is to tell yourself some lies. And then this morning, I read a quote, actually watched a little stand-up bit from Norm Macdonald, who died last year from cancer, but a super, super funny guy. And in one of his stand-up routines, he said this. He was hiding under humor, but it's true. He said, when people commit suicide, no one ever understands, you know? I mean, when someone commits suicide, people go, I don't understand why. And I go, you don't? You think we live in a cotton candy house or something? You don't know about life? How it only disappoints and gets worse and worse and worse until it all ends in a catastrophe called death? Now, if there is no God, all of these guys are right. They're right. These are not people who believed in God. These are people who didn't believe in God, and they were making an accurate assessment of what life without God really is, what it feels like, how life in this world functions if there is no God. They're all right. Every single one of them is right if there is no God. Well, this teacher, this psychologist, I said 2 weeks ago that I like to think of him as a psychologist because he asks probing existential questions about the meaning of life, existence, those sorts of things. And this teacher, this psychologist, catalogs throughout Ecclesiastes, catalogs several of the ways that he tried to find meaning on his own, under the sun, without God.